The morning sky was unusually bright, a clear blue that stretched endlessly over the human settlement of Eloria. Birds chirped. The wind carried the scent of fresh grass, and the small town began its daily hum of activity. Farmers were already in the fields, merchants opening their stalls, and children running along the dusty paths with laughter in their voices. But the peace of Eloria was about to shatter. High above the clouds, shadows moved with terrifying speed. At first, they were just streaks in the sky. But soon, their massive forms became clear dragons. Not just any dragons, but the legendary Red Dragon Pack, known across star systems for their ferocity and unmatched power. They glided through the air like living meteors, scales shining like molten metal, wings cutting through the wind with a sound that made even the birds fall silent. For centuries, humans had heard the stories of these dragons. Tales from distant planets told of entire settlements wiped out in moments, of warriors crushed under claws and teeth, of firestorms that could turn forests into ash. And yet, here they were, not on some distant world, but coming straight for Eloria. The first human to see them was Mara, a young woman who tended the town's herb gardens. She froze, watering can in hand, staring at the sky as the shadows grew larger. Her heart pounded, but she did not run. Fear had been a teacher in her life, and it had taught her that panic often leads to mistakes. She ran toward the town square, shouting warnings. "They're coming! Everyone, get to shelter!" People poured into the streets, their faces pale and voices trembling. Merchants dropped their goods, farmers left their tools, and parents called their children close. The ground began to tremble as the dragons approached. A low rumble in the earth that made windows vibrate, and the wind carried the scent of sulfur and smoke. At first, the dragons flew in formation, a perfect, terrifying line. Their eyes glowed like embers, scanning the town below. They didn't seem to care about the humans. At first glance, they were hunting something. But even the smallest settlements had attracted their notice. The pack's leader, a massive dragon with scales deep red and gold flecks that caught the sunlight, descended lower, talons extended and wings flaring. Its roar shook the air, a sound so powerful that it seemed to ripple through every heart in Eloria. Mara watched from a safe distance, hidden behind a stone wall. She noticed something strange. Unlike the stories she had heard, these dragons did not attack immediately. They circled the town, scanning, sniffing, as if looking for something specific. Fear and curiosity warred inside her chest. She did not understand why these creatures had chosen Eloria, or why they had not destroyed it immediately. Then she saw it. Among the humans who had scattered to safety, a small figure moved calmly, almost fearlessly, toward the center of the town square. It was a young boy, no more than 10, carrying a small bundle wrapped in soft cloth. Mara squinted, her heart skipping a beat. The bundle moved slightly, revealing tiny claws and bright scales. Dragonlings. Baby dragons. The sight made Mara's mind race. Dragons were killers, yes, but their young were precious, fragile, and fiercely protected. The boy was putting himself in unimaginable danger, and yet he did not hesitate. He knelt in the center of the square, setting the bundle down carefully and whispering to it in a soft voice that only the youngest dragons would understand. The pack leader descended closer, massive wings folding as it landed. Its shadow covered the boy and the dragonlings, and the air filled with heat and the smell of smoke. Every person in Eloria froze, expecting the worst. The leader lowered its massive head, nostrils flaring as it sniffed. The baby dragons did not cry. They did not move. They were calm. Somehow, they recognized the human who had saved them. The leader roared again, a deep, guttural sound. But this time, it did not strike. It merely observed. The other dragons circled above, tense, ready to attack, but waiting for the signal from their leader. They were hunters, but the scent of their young had changed everything. Mara stepped closer, careful to stay behind the boy. Her curiosity overpowered her fear. "Why are you here?" she called, her voice trembling but firm. "What do you want?" The leader's glowing eyes shifted to her. In that moment, Mara saw intelligence beyond what any human had imagined. This was no mindless beast, it was a creature of thought. Of instinct, yes, but also capable of judgment. It sniffed the air again, focusing on the boy and the dragonlings. Then it lowered its head to the ground, a signal the other dragons followed. They landed, surrounding the human settlement with careful precision. Talons digging into stone and earth, tails swishing in tension. Mara realized something crucial. These dragons were not here to destroy. Not yet. They were searching. And what they found, the small, fragile, human-protected hatchlings, had made them pause. She approached slowly, hands open, showing she meant no harm. "They're safe," she said. I found them, and I've been keeping them warm." The leader studied her. Its eyes, glowing like molten gold, softened slightly. A human, protecting their young. Mara could almost hear the dragon's thoughts. Not in words, but in the sheer intensity of its gaze. It was not distrust, nor was it anger. It was surprise, curiosity, something rare in creatures so feared. Mara knelt down near the boy, whispering, "They're not afraid. They know you won't hurt them." The boy nodded, holding the dragonlings gently. "They were all alone. I couldn't leave them." The pack leader roared once more, this time lower, almost like a growl of approval. The other dragons shifted in place, relaxing their stances slightly. The town could breathe again, if only a little. For the first time, humans saw the dragons as more than monsters. They were beings, with instincts, emotions, and bonds that could be understood. Still, tension remained. The dragons had not left, and the humans knew better than to think the danger had passed entirely. Mara, sensing this, turned to the crowd. "Stay calm. Don't make sudden movements. They're watching us, but they're not attacking. Not yet. Every three. Every three." The leader stepped closer to the boy, sniffing each hatchling, and then nudged one gently with its snout. The small dragon yawned, curling closer to the boy. A collective gasp escaped from the crowd. Humans had never seen dragons act with such gentleness. The pack's power was undeniable, but so was their care for their young. Mara realized then that this encounter would change everything. Humans had always feared dragons as unstoppable predators. But here, in the middle of Aloria, they saw another side. A side that was not about destruction, but about family, about protection. And maybe, just maybe, humans could find a place in that world, not as prey, but as allies. The morning sun climbed higher, illuminating the scene with golden light. The dragons remained vigilant, wings tensed, eyes alert. But the threat of immediate violence had faded. Mara, the boy, and the town held their breaths, aware that the moment of understanding had begun. Something new was emerging. A fragile bond between species, built on courage, care, and an unexpected recognition of strength. And as the wind rustled the leaves and the dragons watched silently, Mara felt a surge of hope. Perhaps humanity's true power was not in weapons or armies, but in empathy, courage, and the willingness to protect those who could not protect themselves. The Red Dragon Pack had come for blood. But in their discovery of the babies sleeping on a human's chest, the first spark of something extraordinary had been ignited. The sun climbed higher in the sky, casting a warm glow across Aloria. But the warmth did little to ease the tension. The dragons remained in the town, circling, landing, and watching, their massive forms filling every corner of vision. Their scales gleamed red like fire, and their eyes glowed gold. watching every human movement with sharp precision. Every breath of wind carried the scent of dragons, a mixture of smoke and molten earth, and the humans felt it in their lungs. The boy, whose name was Kale, sat cross-legged in the town square, surrounded by the dragon hatchlings. He hummed softly, a tune so gentle it seemed almost magical. The babies stirred, their tiny claws clutching at his clothes, their eyes half closed in comfort. Even Mara, standing nearby, was surprised by the calmness of the scene. It was impossible to believe these were the same creatures whose stories had terrified entire planets. Yet, the massive red dragon pack lingered, wings flicking, tails swishing, muscles coiled as if ready to strike at any moment. The pack leader, whom Kale had learned to call Rythar, stepped closer, lowering its massive head to inspect the boy and the hatchlings. Each claw of Rythar was the size of a small cart, and every movement sent tremors across the cobblestone streets. But Kale did not flinch. Instead, he looked the dragon in the eye, his gaze steady. "You are not afraid," Rythar's growl seemed to say, though no words came from its mouth. Its tone was more thought than sound, a strange form of communication, mental and instinctive. The other dragons began to circle closer, observing, their wings partially spread as if preparing to take flight at the slightest threat. Mara stepped forward cautiously. "They trust you," she said softly, nodding toward the hatchlings. "And somehow, you are starting to trust them too." Rythar tilted its massive head, its eyes narrowing. In human terms, it seemed like curiosity mixed with wariness. The dragons had never before encountered a human who cared for their young. Care, protection, and patience, qualities that humans had in abundance, even if they lacked physical strength, were unfamiliar to creatures built for power and dominance. Kale hummed again, reaching out to stroke one of the hatchlings. The tiny dragon leaned into his touch, eyes closing in contentment. Rythar's tail flicked slightly, a low vibration in the air, as if the leader was assessing Kale's courage and strength. Mara realized that courage did not always roar. Sometimes, it sat quietly in the heart of a child who would risk everything to protect life. The other humans were still frozen in place. Some hid behind buildings, some peered from windows, and others held each other's hands in fear. They did not know what to expect next. Mara raised her voice, calm but firm. "Everyone," she said, "watch carefully. Don't make sudden moves. Let them see that we are not enemies." One of the dragons, smaller but no less dangerous, let out a soft hiss. Its wings twitched nervously. It was a sibling to Rythar, but it was less confident, unsure of these humans who dared to approach their young. Mara held her ground, raising her hands slowly in a gesture of peace. "You don't have to fear us," she said, her voice carrying across the square. "We don't want to hurt your babies. We just want to understand them." The dragon hesitated, its massive head tilting to one side. Its eyes, golden and sharp, flicked from Mara to Kale to the hatchlings. It sniffed the air, sensing something unfamiliar. And then it lowered itself to the ground, claws splaying slightly, a gesture that mirrored trust, or at least cautious curiosity. Rythar roared softly, a sound that was more like a warning than an attack. The sound echoed across the town, and the humans froze again. But Mara noticed something remarkable. The roar was directed not at the humans, but at the smaller dragons, a signal to keep calm. Even in their power, dragons had rules. They had hierarchy, instincts, and an understanding of care for their own. Kale whispered to the hatchlings, "Don't be afraid. They're watching, but they won't hurt you." The baby dragons stirred, stretching tiny wings, and some even crawled over Kale's arms toward the larger dragons. The humans gasped. These were creatures that could have killed them in an instant. Yet the interaction was peaceful, even tender. Rythar watched every movement carefully. Its instincts were telling it to be cautious. It had been bred for battle, hunting, and dominance. Yet the sight of its hatchlings in human care, safe and calm, was forcing it to reconsider old rules. It growled again, low and thoughtful, and shifted its massive bulk closer to the humans, wings partially folding to avoid startling anyone. Mara moved to Kale's side. "Do you think they'll attack?" she asked, keeping her voice low. Kale shook his head. "Not if we stay calm. They can sense fear, but they can also sense care." The humans watched in awe as the dragons seemed to study the boy and Mara, tilting their heads, sniffing the air, and even nudging the hatchlings gently with their snouts. One of the smaller dragons, still nervous, stepped closer to Kale, its eyes bright and curious. Kale reached out, touching its snout softly. The dragon flinched slightly, but did not retreat. It was a moment of understanding, a silent recognition that crossed species boundaries. Mara realized that humanity's strength was not in fighting dragons, but in showing empathy, courage, and protection. These qualities were as powerful as any weapon, even to creatures as mighty as the Red Dragon Pack. The pack leader, Rethar, moved again, this time circling the boy and the hatchlings slowly. Every step shook the ground slightly, but there was no aggression in its movement. It sniffed the air, observing Kale's confidence, Mara's calmness, and the humans' reactions. It was learning, adapting, and perhaps beginning to respect the human species in a way it had never done before. Hours seemed to pass in silence, broken only by soft hisses, the flapping of wings, and Kale's gentle humming. The town had gone still, each human watching the interaction with a mix of fear and wonder. Mara noticed some were even whispering, realizing that humans were not helpless against the legendary dragons. They could earn trust, protect life, and demonstrate courage that rivaled even the strongest creatures in the galaxy. Finally, Rethar lowered its head closer to Kale and the hatchlings, letting out a low rumble that vibrated through the square. Kale reached out, placing a hand gently on the dragon's snout. The massive creature closed its eyes briefly, acknowledging the boy's bravery and care. Mara felt tears prick her eyes. The humans around her began to understand something extraordinary. Strength was not just in claws or fire, but in heart, in empathy, in the willingness to protect those who could not protect themselves. The dragons had come for blood, but what they found in Eloria was something far more powerful. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the town, Mara looked at Kale and the hatchlings. "We've passed the first test," she whispered. "Now, we just have to keep proving ourselves." Rethar stepped back, wings stretching, and let out a sound that was almost a sigh. The tension in the town lessened slightly, though the dragons did not leave. They stayed vigilant, still the most powerful creatures the humans had ever seen. Yet now, there was a spark of understanding, a fragile bridge between two species that had never truly known each other. For the first time, humans in Eloria felt something they had never felt in the presence of dragons. Hope. Hope that coexistence was possible. Hope that courage and care could be as mighty as fire and strength. And most importantly, hope that they had earned a place in a world that had always seemed far larger, far more dangerous than their small town could handle. The night would bring questions, challenges, and perhaps more tests. But for now, the humans and dragons had reached a tentative understanding, a beginning of something new, something extraordinary. And as the stars began to shine above, Mara knew that the events of today would change their world forever. The Red Dragon Pack had come for blood, yes, but they had discovered something far more remarkable: the human heart. The next morning, Eloria awoke to a sky tinged with red and gold, the sunlight glinting off the scales of the Red Dragon Pack still circling above. The town had not slept well. Every human had spent the night wondering what the dragons would do next. The fear was still there, but mingled with a cautious curiosity. Something had changed overnight. The dragons were no longer immediate threats. They were observers, testing, measuring, and judging. Kale was already awake, sitting cross-legged in the town square. The hatchlings nestled around him, chirping softly as they explored their surroundings. Mara approached, carrying a basket of food. She had spent the early hours collecting fruits, herbs, and nuts that might be safe for the young dragons to eat. "They're awake early," Mara said quietly, sitting beside Kale. "Do you think they trust us yet?" Kale shook his head. "Not fully. They're testing us. They always test, even when they trust you. We have to show we can be brave, smart, and careful." Before Mara could reply, a shadow fell across the square. The pack had landed fully this time, their massive wings folding carefully against their backs, claws pressing into the stone streets. Rethar, the leader, stepped forward, each movement deliberate and powerful. The other dragons formed a loose semicircle around the humans, tails coiling, eyes gleaming with intelligence. Rethar let out a low growl, a sound that vibrated through the ground, not threatening, but commanding attention. The humans froze, but Kale remained calm. The hatchlings chirped softly, sensing no immediate danger. Then, Rethar lowered its head to the ground, nudging a small boulder that had been left in the square. It shifted slightly, revealing a hollow beneath. Inside were several glowing crystals, pulsing with an inner light that neither Mara nor Kale had seen before. The dragon's eyes flicked to Kale, then to Mara, as if asking a silent question. "Do you understand this? Can you handle it?" Kale stepped forward, curiosity and caution in equal measure. "What are they?" he asked softly. "Are they dangerous?" Rethar growled softly, a sound that felt more like a warning. Kale studied the crystals carefully. They radiated warmth and energy, and he realized they might be unstable if handled carelessly. Mara joined him, keeping a careful distance from the dragon's claws. "They're testing us," she whispered. "They want to see if we can think, not just act. If we're smart and careful, they'll trust us more." Kale nodded. Slowly, he picked up one of the smaller crystals with both hands, inspecting it. It hummed lightly, reacting to his touch. The dragons watched silently, their glowing eyes fixed on him. He placed the crystal carefully back in the hollow, avoiding any sudden movements. The other crystals followed in the same manner, each handled with thoughtfulness and care. Rethar's eyes narrowed slightly, and then the leader stepped back, allowing the semicircle of dragons to relax a little. It was a signal. Humans could be careful and clever, not just fearful or reckless. The first test had been passed, but there would be more. From above, one of the younger dragons dropped a large, smooth stone that landed near Kale with a sharp thunk. The stone wasn't ordinary. It was heavier than it looked, and it had a strange pattern carved into it. Mara picked it up carefully. The dragon above let out a soft hiss, wings flicking. It was clear that this was another test. Strength and attention combined. Kale studied the stone. "It's heavy, but I think I can move it if I use both hands." He lifted it slowly, feeling the weight press against his arms. The hatchlings watched him, their tiny claws gripping his clothes as if rooting for him. Mara assisted him, adjusting her grip so they could lift it together. Step by step, they carried the stone to a safer place, avoiding the dragon's sharp talons. The pack observed, and Mara noticed that even the youngest dragons tilted their heads in approval. The humans were proving themselves not just capable, but careful, patient, and deliberate. Strength and bravery mattered, but wisdom mattered more. Suddenly, a loud roar echoed across the town. The sound was not angry, it was commanding attention. Rethar had lifted its massive wings and stomped the ground, sending vibrations across the square. Mara felt the tremor beneath her feet. The other dragons followed suit. forming a tight circle around Kale and the hatchlings. Then came the most dangerous test yet, the pack's flying maneuvers. Dragons began leaping into the air, twisting and turning, circling above the humans in patterns that were both beautiful and intimidating. Mara held Kale's shoulder as he watched the display. The hatchlings chirped nervously, curling closer to him. One dragon swooped low, talons extended, close enough to make the humans flinch. But it did not strike. It was testing their composure under pressure. Could they remain calm in the face of overwhelming power? Mara kept her voice steady. "Stay calm," she whispered to Kale. "Don't move too fast. Let them see that we're not afraid, but that we respect them." Kale nodded, breathing slowly, and the hatchlings relaxed slightly under his gentle hands. The swooping dragon circled again, then returned to the ground, nudging one of the hatchlings as if checking for their safety. Mara realized something remarkable. The dragons were teaching, not punishing. Hours passed, with the humans performing small acts of courage, patience, and intelligence. They moved carefully around the dragons, handled strange crystals, lifted heavy stones, and even guided the hatchlings safely through small obstacles. The pack observed every action, sometimes hissing softly or nudging humans in subtle ways to correct mistakes. By late afternoon, the tension began to ease. Rythar stepped forward once more, lowering its massive head to the ground. Its eyes locked onto Kale and Mara, glowing golden in the sunlight. The leader's growl was low, almost approving. It nudged the hatchlings gently, then lifted its head, giving a subtle nod. The humans understood the gesture. They had passed the first stage of the dragon's tests. It was not victory in a battle, but something far more meaningful: recognition. The pack had begun to see humans not as weak prey, but as worthy of trust, capable of courage and intelligence beyond mere instinct. Mara looked around at the townspeople, who had emerged cautiously from their homes. Some clapped softly. Others whispered in amazement. They had witnessed something extraordinary. Humans standing in the presence of the legendary Red Dragon Pack and proving themselves without weapons, without violence, only with courage, patience, and care. Kale smiled, exhausted but proud. "They're starting to understand us," he said. "But we have to keep showing them we're brave, smart, and careful. We can't let fear control us." Rythar roared softly, wings stretching, then let out a deep vibration that felt almost like a laugh. Mara realized it was a sound of respect, something humans rarely earned from dragons. The others in the pack followed suit, a chorus of low growls and vibrations that shook the ground gently. The day ended with the dragons settling around the town, not as enemies but as observers. They would not leave, yet they had more tests, more lessons, and more opportunities to judge. But the humans of Eloria had taken the first step toward a bond that had seemed impossible just 24 hours earlier. That night, Mara walked through the quiet streets, thinking about what had happened. The dragons were fierce, powerful, and potentially dangerous, but they had rules, instincts, and even intelligence that could recognize courage and care. Humanity's true strength was beginning to shine. Not in weapons or numbers, but in the heart, the mind, and the courage to face the unknown without losing compassion. Kale, sitting near the hatchlings, looked up at the stars. "They're not just testing us," he said softly. "They're teaching us. And if we learn, maybe we can become allies, maybe even friends." Mara nodded, her heart full of hope. The Red Dragon Pack had come for blood. Yes, but in testing the humans, they had begun to see them as more than prey. They had begun to see them as equals in courage, wisdom, and care. And in that recognition lay the seed of something extraordinary, something that could change the future of both species forever. The night air was calm, but the humans knew the tests were far from over. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new lessons, and perhaps new risks. But for now, they had survived. They had proven themselves, and they had earned a measure of trust from creatures that had seemed unstoppable. The Red Dragon Pack had come for blood, but they had discovered a new truth. Strength is not just in fire or claws, but in courage, care, and the willingness to protect life. And with that discovery, the bond between humans and dragons had begun. The morning air in Aloria was crisp and still, carrying the scent of dew and the lingering warmth of Dragon's presence. The town had slowly returned to its routines, but everyone felt the weight of yesterday's events. The Red Dragon Pack had not left. They had watched, observed, and judged. And now, it seemed, they were ready to test the humans further. KL sat in the square, surrounded by the hatchlings who had begun to recognize him as their protector. They chirped softly, stretching tiny wings, and explored their surroundings with cautious curiosity. Mara joined him, carrying a bundle of herbs she had gathered. "They're going to test us again," she said quietly. "I can feel it. Today will be more than observing. They want to see what we can do under pressure." Kale nodded. "Then we have to stay calm. We've learned how to show courage and care. Now, we need to show wisdom and teamwork." From above, the largest dragon, Rethar, let out a low, commanding roar. The sound vibrated through the town, making windows shake and birds scatter into the sky. The other dragons followed, landing with immense precision around the square. Their claws dug into the ground, tails flicking, wings partially spread, as if ready to take off at a moment's notice. Then the real challenge began. Rethar's massive head tilted toward the humans, and with a swift motion, it nudged a large, jagged boulder into the middle of the square. The boulder had fallen from the nearby cliffs and blocked the main pathway through the town. It was massive, too heavy for any one human to move alone. Mara and Kale exchanged a glance. "It's a test," Mara said. "Strength and cooperation. They want to see if we can work together." Baidi. Kael stood and gestured to the townspeople who had gathered cautiously at the edges of the square. "Everyone, come. We need to move this boulder, but carefully. If we work together, we can do it safely." The humans approached slowly, forming lines and wrapping ropes around the boulder. They pushed and lifted, feeling the weight press against their muscles. Sweat dripped down their faces, and the dragon hatchlings chirped nervously, curling close to Kale for comfort. The adult dragons watched silently, wings twitching, eyes sharp and calculating. Hours passed as the humans coordinated their efforts. Mara shouted instructions. Kale encouraged the townspeople, and together, they shifted the boulder inch by inch. The dragon's eyes followed every movement, assessing patience, teamwork, and intelligence. When the boulder finally moved aside, revealing a clear path, Rethar roared low in approval. The humans exhaled in relief, but there was no time to rest. Another challenge awaited. From the cliffs above, a group of rocks began to tumble, dislodged by the dragon's movement. They were aimed toward the town, but with precise calculations, the dragons directed them in safe zones for humans to practice quick thinking and agility. "Watch your step," Mara shouted. "Move to the safe areas and guide the children." Kale led the hatchlings under cover, teaching the humans how to move carefully and anticipate danger. Some of the younger townspeople stumbled, but with guidance, they learned to react quickly and think ahead. The dragons observed, noting how humans could adapt under pressure without panicking. Then came the most dangerous part of the test. Rethar and the other adult dragons created a mock obstacle course for the humans. Large rocks, sharp branches, and glowing crystals from the previous day were arranged in patterns that challenged strength, balance, and problem-solving. Mara and Kael realized this was not just about bravery. It was about intelligence, resourcefulness, and trust. Kale whispered to Mara. They want to see if we can stay calm, protect the hatchlings, and solve problems at the same time. Mara nodded. We have to show them we're worthy of trust. Not just bravery, but wisdom. The humans moved carefully through the course, lifting stones, avoiding traps, and guiding the hatchlings safely along the paths. Each step required thought, precision, and teamwork. Occasionally, a dragon nudged a problem into place, forcing the humans to think faster. Sometimes, they had to figure out how to protect themselves without harming the dragons or their young. Kale led by example, moving calmly, speaking softly to the hatchlings, and helping others navigate obstacles. Mara followed, instructing townspeople on how to lift heavy objects without injury and how to anticipate the dragon's movements. The dragons roared softly from time to time, testing the humans' reactions. Mara noticed that even the most nervous townspeople began to adapt. Fear turned into focus, panic turned into strategy, and hesitation turned into confidence. Rethar observed closely. Its golden eyes scanned the humans' every action. Unlike yesterday, when the test was about basic courage, today was about layered skills, teamwork, intelligence, and care under pressure. The pack leader's tail swished slowly, as if considering each human individually, learning their strengths, weaknesses, and character. By mid-afternoon, the humans had completed the obstacle course. They were tired, sweaty, and bruised, but they had succeeded without injury to themselves or the hatchlings. Rithar stepped forward, lowering its massive head to inspect KL and the hatchlings. Its eyes glowed warmly, a rare display of approval. The other dragons gathered closer, tails curling gently, wings folding in relaxed positions. The townspeople realized that the dragons were not just testing them, they were teaching them. Every challenge had a lesson. Every obstacle had a purpose. The humans had learned patience, planning, communication, and courage beyond the ordinary. Mara turned to Kale, smiling despite exhaustion. They're starting to respect us. They've seen our strength isn't just in numbers or weapons, it's in our hearts and minds. Kale nodded. And our courage. Our willingness to protect the hatchlings. That's what matters most to them. The hatchlings chirped happily, crawling over Kale's arms and shoulders. One tiny dragon nuzzled Mara's hand, and she realized that trust had been built. The bond was no longer fragile, it was forming into something strong, lasting, and mutual. Rethar roared again, this time low and gentle, signaling the end of the challenges. The dragons began to lift off slowly, circling above the town before settling nearby on the cliffs, still watching but no longer pressing tests directly. The humans exhaled collectively, realizing they had survived and succeeded. That night, the town gathered around a fire in the square. Mara spoke to the crowd, her voice calm but strong. We've learned something important today. The dragons are powerful, yes, but they respect courage, intelligence, and care. Our strength is not in fighting them, but in showing we can protect life, solve problems, and work together. Kale added, and they've begun to trust us. That trust is something we must honor. We must keep being brave, careful, and wise, because tomorrow will bring new lessons and maybe new challenges. The townspeople nodded, inspired by the day's events. Even those who had been the most fearful realized that humans had a power that dragons had not expected. The power of heart and mind combined. From the cliffs above, the adult dragons watched silently, wings folding as the sun dipped below the horizon. Rethar's gaze lingered on Kale and the hatchlings, then on Mara, before sweeping over the town. The pack leader's mind was sharp, calculating, and now tinged with respect. Humans were not weak prey. They were brave, intelligent, and worthy of consideration. As the stars began to appear in the sky, Mara and Kale sat near the hatchlings, quietly reflecting. Today was hard, Mara said softly. "But I feel like we've earned something. Not victory, but understanding." Kale smiled, holding a hatchling gently. "They've begun to see what we already knew. Humans can be more than fear, more than weakness. We can protect, adapt, and care, and that is real strength." The night was calm, but both humans and dragons knew that the challenges were not over. Tomorrow might bring even greater tests, perhaps tests of leadership, strategy, or deeper understanding. But for now, Aloria had proven itself. The bond between humans and dragons had strengthened, built on courage, intelligence, and care. And as Mara looked up at the stars, she felt hope. The Red Dragon Pack had come for blood, but they had discovered something far more powerful: the strength of the human spirit. For the first time, humans and dragons were not merely observers of each other. They were participants in a growing relationship, one that could shape the future of both species forever. The morning sun painted the sky with soft gold and orange hues, reflecting off the scales of the Red Dragon Pack as they circled above Aloria. The town had woken early, a mixture of anticipation and calm determination in the air. Yesterday's challenges had changed everything. Humans had proven themselves not by fighting dragons, but by showing courage, intelligence, and care. Today, the dragons would take the next step, and Aloria was ready. Kale stood in the town square, surrounded by the hatchlings. They chirped happily, stretching their tiny wings and exploring the cobblestones under his careful watch. Mara approached, carrying a basket filled with food and herbs. She set it down gently beside the boy and smiled. "They're going to test us one last time," she said softly. "I can feel it. Not with danger this time, but with understanding." Kale nodded. "Then, we show them we can be brave, smart, and caring all at once. We've come this far." From the cliffs above, Rethar descended first, wings spread wide and eyes glowing with intelligence. The other dragons followed, forming a semicircle around the square. The humans, instead of cowering, stood their ground, calm but ready. The bond formed over the past days had given them confidence, and the dragons could sense it. Rythar's gaze fell on Kael and the hatchlings, then swept across the town. Its roar was deep and commanding, but this time, there was no threat in it. It was a call for attention, a signal that the final test would begin. The test was not physical. It was a challenge of heart, strategy, and cooperation. Rethar nudged a series of small, glowing crystals toward the humans. They pulsed with soft energy, and as Mara picked one up, she realized that each crystal represented a choice, a decision that could affect the safety of the hatchlings and the humans alike. Kale's eyes widened. "We have to choose carefully," he whispered. "The dragons are testing our judgment. Not strength, not speed, but wisdom." The townspeople gathered, whispering quietly among themselves. Mara instructed, "Work together. Discuss each choice. Think about the hatchlings, think about each other, and think about what the dragons are trying to teach us." The first crystal emitted a soft blue light. When touched, it caused the hatchlings to chirp nervously. Mara reached out, carefully lifting it and placing it in a safe position. Another crystal glowed red, vibrating faintly, signaling a more urgent decision. Kale studied it, realizing that one wrong choice could cause stress or confusion for the young dragons. Together, humans and dragons learned from each other. Mara guided her people, teaching them to handle the crystals with patience and precision. Kale calmed the hatchlings, showing them that humans could protect, not harm. The dragons observed every movement, noting calmness under pressure, intelligence in decision-making, and courage paired with compassion. Hours passed as the humans moved crystals, solved puzzles, and made choices with care. Every success brought subtle changes in the dragon's behavior. Wings relaxed slightly, tails lowered, and the golden eyes softened. The Red Dragon Pack was learning too, not just about humans, but about trust, cooperation, and the value of shared understanding. Finally, the last crystal pulsed gently in Kale's hands. He took a deep breath and placed it carefully in the center of the square. The moment was quiet, almost sacred. The hatchlings chirped softly, curling closer to Kale, sensing the human's calm confidence. Rythar stepped forward, its massive head lowering to Kale's level. The leader's golden eyes glowed warmly, and a low rumble vibrated through the square. It was a sound of approval, of respect, not fear. The other dragons followed suit, nudging the humans gently, their movements careful and deliberate. Mara felt tears prick her eyes. The dragons had not just tested them, they had accepted them. Humans were no longer strangers, no longer weak prey. They were trusted allies. Kale looked around the town square, at the townspeople who had stood firm and brave, and he felt a swell of pride. They had faced fear, pressure, and the unknown, and they had succeeded not with weapons, but with courage, care, and intelligence. Rythar's wings flared, and the leader let out a long, low roar. But this time, it was not a warning. It was a call of unity. The pack circled above the town in synchronized flight, a display of strength and grace, yet one that included humans in its rhythm. Mara and Kyle watched, awestruck, as the dragons moved as one. A perfect balance of power and trust. Then, the unexpected happened. A few of the adult dragons stepped closer, lowering their heads to the townspeople, allowing the humans to touch their scales safely. It was a gesture of acceptance, an invitation to bond. Mara and Kyle approached cautiously, hands trembling as they reached out. The dragons remained still, letting them feel the strength and warmth of their powerful bodies, without fear. The hatchlings chirped joyfully, crawling over Kale and Mara as if celebrating the newfound harmony. The townspeople followed, some hesitant, some with wide smiles, but all touched the dragon's scales and felt the connection. For the first time, humans and dragons shared space as equals, bound by respect and trust. Rythar lowered its massive head toward Kyle once more. With a gentle nudge, it pressed its snout to the boy's chest, a gesture of recognition and gratitude. Kale smiled, returning the gesture, feeling the heat of the dragon's scales and the strength of its presence. Mara joined him, placing a hand gently on the leader's claw. The other dragons followed suit, nudging humans gently, circling closer, and even lowering their wings to create a protective canopy. The bond was complete. Humans were no longer just survivors, they were allies, partners, and protectors of the dragon's young. Mara turned to the crowd, her voice calm but firm. "We've earned their trust," she said. "Not by fighting, not by hiding, but by showing courage, care, and intelligence. Today, we are no longer just humans living beside dragons. We are their friends, their allies, and their protectors." The townspeople erupted into quiet cheers, celebrating not just survival, but understanding. The hatchlings chirped happily, stretching their wings and exploring safely among the humans. Kale laughed softly, holding a hatchling close. "We did it," he said. "We showed them who we are." From the cliffs above, Rythar roared one last time, a sound that echoed across the valleys and hills beyond Aloria. It was a sound of power, of pride, and of recognition. The dragons lifted into the sky, circling in formation before disappearing beyond the horizon. But they would return. They had found something rare in humans, a species capable of courage, intelligence, and care. That evening, the town gathered around a large fire in the square. Mara spoke again, this time to everyone, young and old. "We have learned an important truth. Real strength is not measured by weapons or power alone. Strength is in heart, in wisdom, and in courage. Today, we have shown that humans can be more than survivors. We can be friends and protectors, even to creatures as mighty as the Red Dragon Pack. Kale held a hatchling in his lap, looking up at the stars. Now it's our responsibility to honor it, to protect them, and to keep learning from them. This is the beginning of something extraordinary. The townspeople nodded, inspired by the events of the past days. Fear had turned into understanding, doubt had turned into confidence, and isolation had turned into partnership. Humans and dragons had discovered a new world together, one where strength, care, and intelligence were equally valued. As night fell, the town of Aloria was quiet but alive with hope. The bond forged between humans and dragons promised a future of cooperation, protection, and shared growth. Mara and Kael watched the stars, knowing that this was only the beginning. The Red Dragon Pack had come for blood, but they had left with something far more important. A bond that would shape the future. For both species, forever. And so, under the starlit sky, humans and dragons shared a rare understanding. Fear had been replaced by trust, tension by respect, and hostility by friendship. The legacy of courage, intelligence, and care would live on, inspiring generations to come. The Red Dragon Pack had discovered humanity, and humanity had discovered its true strength. A new era had begun.